I'm Dr. Liz Stafford, and this is Primary Music in Conversation. Before I introduce you to my first guest for this brand new podcast, I wanted to give you a little flavour of the thinking around why we decided to start such a podcast in the first place. And it's basically been born out of frustration from hearing people who are not directly involved in schools, not directly involved in music education, saying things with great confidence like music has died out in schools or schools don't do music anymore. It's on a fairly regular basis that we see somebody, usually a celebrity or an arts professional or somebody who obviously has a vested interest in music but is not directly involved in music education or in schools, saying on social media or saying, quoted as saying in the press, that these things have happened, that music isn't happening in schools anymore. And it's simply not the case. And I'm getting very frustrated having to read this argument over and over again and seeing people jumping onto it going, oh, yes, isn't it terrible? Without actually doing the research to find out whether it's true or not. Now, in fairness to these people, there is no research out there that tells us what every single school is doing with music. And that's whether you're talking about just schools in England or schools across the whole of the UK or schools across the wider world. Nobody has done a study that has reliably looked at every single school and exactly what they're doing with music. And of course, the minute somebody did that study, were they able to do so, the data would become out of date almost immediately. But even for the example of England, where the DfE has put millions of pounds worth of funding into music over the last several decades, even the DfE does not know what is happening with music in every single school. So how somebody who is happy to talk to the press or come out on social media can claim to say, oh, music doesn't happen in schools anymore, I find a little bit suspicious. And I think it's a real shame because I think out there are schools and teachers just quietly getting on with providing a music education for their pupils. And we never hear from these people because they're too busy actually doing their jobs. It's never those voices that we're hearing in the public sphere. It's always the naysayers. It's always the people who think they know what they're talking about and who perhaps have other issues that they've decided that schools are to blame for. The classic one is, audience numbers declining, and that often gets pinned on, oh, those lazy teachers aren't making children like classical music, for example. So I wanted to find a way to actually find out what's really happening in schools and showcase that, talk to the people in schools who are actually doing their job of teaching children music. So the idea of this podcast series is basically just for me to have some chats with some people on the ground, finding out what they're doing in their school, how they're best serving their pupils, what kind of musical opportunities they're offering, both to promote the amazing work that they're doing and that schools up and down the country and in the wider UK and across the globe are doing with music, but also to inspire other schools. Because, of course, we know that there are schools who are struggling with music. Nobody's denying that. So if there are schools out there thinking, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go next, telling them, oh, schools don't do music anymore is not helping the problem. But maybe coming and listening to this podcast, hearing from schools just like you about what they've done to overcome similar challenges and how they are giving a musical education to their pupils, hopefully that will provide some inspiration and that will be helpful to schools. As well as, of course, getting the message out that schools do music. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our very first guest for Primary Music in Conversation. When I came up with the idea of this podcast, I knew straight away that I wanted Helen Byard to be our first guest. Helen is very active on social media, which is how I first found her. We've had lots of Twitter chats. We've been involved in the same kind of threads and discussions, so we know we're on the same page where it comes to music. And that's how I first became aware of her work. She's since started to write for Primary Music magazine and has provided some really great inspirational articles drawing on her experience at Edenbridge Primary School. And so I'm really delighted that actually the first time we have a conversation in real life, albeit through a screen, is going to be for the purposes of this podcast. And I'm delighted to welcome Helen here today. So, welcome Helen Byard from Edenbridge Primary School, our very first guest for Primary Music in Conversation. Just before we kick off with our conversation, it'd be great to know a little bit more about you so our listeners can kind of work out where you're coming from and what your background is.
Lovely. Hi, thanks for having me. Helen Byard, I'm a classroom teacher from the beginning. So year 2000, I qualified Key Stage 2 classroom teacher. But at the school I'm at currently, which is Edenbridge Primary School, which is part of the Pioneer Trust, Pioneer Academy, I just teach music. So I am their music specialist and their music lead. I have been there for 5 years now. And it's quite a different role from being the class teacher with music as your lead subject. And there's obviously pros and cons for both. But I love the school I'm at the moment. They're very supportive. They value the arts. And as you can tell, they employ me. So that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And I'm hoping as we go through the series that we'll talk to lots of different people in different situations. So people where the class teachers are teaching the music, people like yourself, where they're a specialist. So it would be great to kind of get a sense of how that's working for you in this kind of school context. So maybe we can start by, can I just ask you like, how music is going in your school, what you do with music in your school? Just give us like a
Yeah.
flavour of how things work.
Yeah, sure. So when I first arrived, kind of classic case, I guess they were trying to follow a scheme, but there was no one really leading music. And I don't think they realised the possibilities music had for a school, which is quite common. But so I arrived and it was a completely empty room. So I have a music room, which is amazing, which over the last 5 years I have filled. And I'm now sort of trying to go into the corridors and the spare rooms and all the rest of it. So we have an hour of music per class every week, and it's consistent. So I am the PPA cover teacher, effectively, but I'm never pulled to cover classes. They come for music, and that is written into the timetable. So having that consistency means that every week I can start the progression. I know what's going to happen. It's an excellent way of putting music into the curriculum. It's something that I can monitor really well. So a lot of the music lessons have been written by me, but it's generally over 20 years of accumulating lots of different ideas and schemes and using sort of a variety of methods. And it's kind of settled into this new curriculum, which I also have to take into account IPC, which is the International Primary Curriculum, which the school teaches. And they use that for science and geography and history and other cross-curricular subjects. And that is integrated into music naturally as I can. So I don't have to force a subject, a topic to match music, but I do think you can pretty much match music into anything you're given. So at the moment, the music is written in terms of elements per term. So we do pitch for a term, rhythm, voice, 20th century music. We have a key focus, musical focus. And then depending if there's an IPC topic which links to it, I will integrate that. For example, year 4 at the moment have a topic called All Aboard, which is their transport links. And obviously with jazz, there's hundreds of ways I can add music, in the railways and everything. So if it matches naturally, then it's a great combination, and I can just enhance the curriculum they already have. And I think that's also an advantage of being a classroom teacher, is I understand those requirements. I've taught IPC, I've taught, all sorts of other cross-curricular schemes. So when I have that in mind when I'm doing my music curriculum, but luckily I can put music as the most important thing. So
Absolutely.
that's how it works, really.
And I suppose as you say, you're at an advantage because you understand both sides of it. So it's not like you're coming in at only ever having taught music and then being told this is our science topic, just get on with it.
Yeah.
And I suppose also because you're in charge of all the music for all the year groups, you can make sure those topic links don't steer you off course with your musical
Yeah,
progression as
100%.
well.
Yes. I do feel in control. I think this is credit to the school that they have trusted me to come and show them what I can do. And then I guess you prove your worth, don't you, from then on? But yeah, so I am never sort of directed forcefully into a certain topic, but that it's appreciated. That's probably one way of putting it. It's appreciated if I can link things. And like I said, it's normally quite easy to link. It's just I just need to make sure that music is the key element of the music lesson. But again, yeah, having the music room, I have a dedicated place where the pupils come to, so I don't have to worry about the hall being set up for lunch or anything. I can have all my instruments out at any time all day, and that side of it makes teaching music a lot easier. Yeah, I don't have to timetable myself in. And I think I've said before, like I've had music cupboards or music trolleys, music, it's kind of squished around the school somewhere. So I do love having a really dedicated music room. Also, you can be quite spontaneous as well. Like if you're talking about rhythm, you can just go right past the beaters, or you can literally demonstrate it on the spot. So yeah, I think the children do get a very consistent sort of and very highly exposed to music every week, and that's all the way from reception as well up to year 6. In year 6, we focus on their whole class instrumental lessons. So, and I put that in year 6 particularly because I felt I'd had a really good input into their musical knowledge up until there. So we'd talked about rhythm. We've touched on notation in year 5. We've that a lot of understanding of how to read music and listen to it and appreciate it. And so in year 6, I just felt they were the age to be really dedicated to learning an instrument for a prolonged time. So we have a partnership with Kent Music, and fantastic ukulele teacher Reggie Lawrence comes in to teach our ukulele lessons, but with me. So again, he's not used as cover, which obviously is a thing. And the agreement is that a teacher is in the room when you're sent, a specialist teacher, but you get so much more out of it because there's 2 of us. We can, he can lead his specialism, and I can enhance all the sort of individualities of the class, helping all the SEN and the focus, and makes it really fun. It makes it way more enjoyable, way more manageable. And yeah, I feel they have a real chance of learning a lesson, an instrument for a prolonged amount of time. And they've been exposed to other instruments all the way through their time at Edenbridge. So, currently I'm doing recorders in year 3, and I did it in summer so we can go in the field because I'm not silly. So it's been perfect. We do half the lesson in the classroom and the second half of the lesson's out in the field. And if they're composing their own music, the space is perfect.
Oh, amazing.
Top tip, put recorders in the summertime. Yeah, so the progression, I'm very aware of the progression because I have every class. So I do feel very in control, and I do use the spiral method that everyone is starting off with rhythm in term one. And so I can instantly see reception leading into year two, leading into four, leading into six. And it gives me a very clear overview of what I'm expecting the year sixes to leave school with. So yeah, seems to work well.
I was just thinking, you must, if you're teaching everybody, you must know the children better than anyone else in the school.
Yeah, me and the sports lead. Yeah, we're the two that teach every child in the school. It's true. I think when class teachers, been a class teacher most of my career, so I love that feeling of having your class and teaching everything. But because I've been there long enough now, I absolutely love seeing a child from year one to year six progress, and I do feel like they're all mine. Yeah, the whole school. But you can also see sort of trends as well, or I don't know if that's quite the right word. You can see sort of the analytics of how a class works, and you can adjust slightly because you have characters, etc. And it does change the mode of a class. It changes the dynamics of a class. So you can't expect your new year fours are going to be like your old year fours. You do have to do your, teacher judgment and everything. But because I don't have that awkward or that settling in period at the beginning of the year, we just start. I just literally, I know you guys, and we just start, and it's really nice. And I can also hark back to lessons I've done because I taught them. So when I'm saying, do you remember last year when we did this and that? Obviously they go, no, but I'm like, you do, because I taught it. So with conviction, I can say we did this, and and remind them, and then you can build on things like that. So progression, I feel, is easy to control
Mm.
and to monitor. Yeah.
Yeah, you must be at such an advantage there. I just think, yeah, that's the dream, isn't it? You know exactly what's been done before, you know what's coming afterwards, and you're just in control of the whole
Yeah.
process.
It is really different when you're a classroom teacher with music as a lead. You, like any subject, you hand over the quality of teaching or the consistency to other teachers, which is an unknown sometimes. So
Mm.
yeah, you can do as much as you can do, and then you are relying on others. And with a subject like music, it's been widely discussed, the training that happens in sort of the NQT ECT period is little to none. And then it's a really hard, it's never one of the subjects where their mentor will come and, well, I'd like to come and visit you doing music. It'll be maths, English, science, it'll be the classics. So it would be great if they were pushed out of their comfort zone to do that really early, and then break the fear and get the training they need. So yeah, sometimes, I mean, I've worked in schools where teachers have point blank refused. They've just like, no, I don't do that. And you just have to work around it, deal with it. Sometimes we've done team teaching where I'm like, right, well, you can teach my RE, I'll teach your music, and you swap classes and things like that. But it is much easier having full control. It is true. Yeah. And then there's all
Yeah.
the cross curricular as well, which is a completely, well, I'd say separate. Obviously, I do it all, but it does happen outside the classroom. So it is very different to music curriculum. But that is another whole department that really you need help with. And as a one-man band, I've got an amazing teaching assistant who is absolutely dedicated to choir. She comes to every, choir rehearsal. She drives our minibus. She's my first aider, and she's my kind of right-hand man. But with staffing and actually doing the risk assessments and the communication and the emails and the admin side, it is all me. But I've made some really good I've got some really good relationships with lots of outside companies, and we've formed a little team. Really, I have a little WhatsApp group, a little music WhatsApp group, because it can be a bit lonely being the one flute teacher that comes in and goes out and doesn't talk to another adult. So yeah, I've put everybody together. We meet up for drinks and things to chat. Um, so yeah, I've got about five different companies that are all involved in music in some way, like Rocksteady. They're fab and they do 4 or 5 rock groups. And we have a piano teacher, we have basically I have got it all covered. Um, but it's quite hard when you are speaking to a company, they can't provide everything. It would be quite great if I could say, can I have a a woodwind teacher, a strings teacher, a drum teacher, and a vocals from one company, and just either lack of tutors or what they can provide in that area, in timetabling, you kind of have to spread out and find a little bit from everywhere. But it is, yeah, good communication is key for that.
And so with your extracurricular, so obviously you said like within the curriculum, children learning things like the recorder and they're doing your ukuleles in year 6. So talk us through like the co-curricular or the extracurricular, what opportunities are there for that kind of stuff like instrumental lessons and ensembles and those sort of things?
Yeah, so we do have lots. We now offer every type of instrumental family. So we have got a piano teacher, we have a vocals teacher. I do the choir, so I have Key Stage 2 choir, and we go to Young Voices, and we go to singing festivals, and we sing in the community, our local sort of residential homes, and so we try and get out there as much as we can. We've got an Edenbridge has got a brass band as well, and we've got some links with them. So we've always encouraging like brass. We've only got like one trumpet player at the moment, so that's it goes down. But we've got a new cellist, and so I'm very excited. One of our year 4s have taken up the cellist. Yeah, and we have a fantastic drummer. Like I say, Rocksteady come in, and these are all well, they're not all after school clubs. They're normally in the curriculum. And luckily, our SLT and class teachers are very, very accommodating. I've never ever had another teacher complain that a child is leaving their class to come to lessons. I think they all see the benefit. They all realise it's not just going to have some fun in a music room for half an hour and then coming back to serious literacy. It's taken seriously, it's valued. And then the after school club is the choir. But yeah, it takes a lot of time to coordinate and get these things in place, and they don't happen on day one. I have built this over the last sort of 5 years, and then when you've got the relationships, it's nice that those teachers want to stay with you as well, because they might have 5 students and you're hanging on to them because that might not be worth it for them. But our cohorts, we're not in an area where every child will be able to afford an instrument. That's just not our cohort. So we've been looking into lots of grants to subsidize lessons. We've used pupil premium money before to pay for 20 children to have out their rock band lessons for the year and for violin lessons. So we've got to be creative in how we can encourage children to have their outside music curriculum one-to-one lessons, make it possible for them. A lot of our tutors come from music hubs as well, so we can get some sort of subsidized fees or agreements, which is perfect for us. Or we just encourage them to look at like financial assistant programs. But again, they're the sort of things that they're not aware of. And if you haven't got someone saying, here's the link, click here, it could get you 75% off your lessons for the year, they wouldn't know. And then you're in the sort of cycle of, oh, I can't afford it, won't look into it. So it's kind of not quite as simple as just saying, we have a piano teacher, here you go, guys, sign up. There's a bit more work to do as well. And I do directly contact parents and let them know that I think this instrument would be a good match for them. Have you considered this? So I kind of try and plant seeds everywhere as well. And especially some instruments that that are more uncommon. So just to make them more aware that it's out there and it's possible. Somehow it's possible.
And I guess what people sometimes don't realize is that it, like you say, it's not so much as like, well, we've got a piano teacher, job done, we're offering piano lessons. Not only is it sort of making people aware of that, but it's a constant cycle of making people aware because you've got new families coming through and like your music, it's
Yes.
never in a stable state, is it? Because you've constantly got to be telling new people about the things that are already there and also bringing in new things and telling everyone about those.
Oh, that
So
is so true. That is so true. And it can be termly because if a timetable changes, like somebody's year 5 sport is now on a Wednesday, that like I have to let the piano teacher know to rejig some of their timetable. Yeah, it is constant. You do have to monitor it all the time. And like you said, you can't just sit back and go, great, we now have 10 pianists. You still have to keep the promoting, encouraging. Year 6s are going to go. You've got to get your new lot coming through. So yeah, it's kind of constant. I don't know. You get a few months when you sit back and go, oh, this is this is looking good. This is perfect, and then you start again. But yeah.
So I'm wondering like how you manage that enormous amount of work. So like have your school recognized that and given you like off timetable time to do that, or are you doing it through goodwill? How are you making all this stuff happen, Helen?
Um, I think this is just classic teacher land. You just do it when you do it. And yes, supportive in the way that I get lots of nice positive comments. That was, excellent. And I get some exposure on through the website and in the newsletters, and the appreciation side comes. But no, I get my very standard PPA time, and we get a tiny bit of we do get a bit of subject leadership time. Actually, that's not true. We get about 2 hours a term. So, you know, I kind of do 2 hours a week, and it would be ideal if I could get more. Things like risk assessments take hours, and filling out grant forms take a long time. So yeah, I think it's just the world of teaching. I mean, I'd love to say that I get a whole day and that's how I manage it, but I don't. I
No,
get
and
I
I
get a
think
little
that's unrealistic.
nod. Yeah, exactly. I get a little nod to we all have subject responsibilities, so we all get a little bit of time. But to do the things that are in place takes more time than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the case with everything with teaching, isn't it? But I think it's
Yes.
probably particularly the case with music and I guess PE as well sometimes similar if you've got lots of
Yeah.
sports teams and stuff.
It's
Those are the
yeah.
subjects that take the most time.
I know, and it's the late nights as well. A lot of these concerts, we finish at 7. Young Voices were back at about 11:30 at night, and you just are. That's just the way it is.
Mm.
So yeah, there's not many subjects that have that sort of extra over and above responsibility. It's normally in school time responsibility, but yeah, sport and music particularly bleeds out to a good couple of hours outside of school time. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very, very true.
absolutely. And with your curriculum, is it kind of very fixed now, or are you updating it a lot? Are you constantly changing it? Are you fiddling with it, or have you got it to the stage where you're like,
Always,
I
always.
know, oh yeah, I knew you were going to say this to me. So it's not a case of like I can reuse all these plans next year.
Well, in theory, they are all there, but always there's something new, or there might be a new initiative, or the Royal Opera House might be doing a project, and I've signed up to that, or you know, there's lots of there's too much choice. There's too much choice. Generally, I try and fix my key objectives. So, like I was describing, term 1, rhythm, I will try and fix it. That is my focus. Stay focused on rhythm. But yes, oh my goodness, the minute social media exploded during COVID with, connecting music teachers from around the world, that's it now. There's ideas left, right, and center. So and access to just YouTube clips. I'm like, I love that starter, or that's different. So Yeah, I think I probably have the bones in place because I've got a nice rolling curriculum where I know what my outcomes are. I know what my sort of end goals are. But there's always new things to learn, aren't there? There's always new things to be inspired by. And to be fair, the curriculum, depending how my school would like it to be, does change as well. So a bit like adding the topics, that's movable sometimes.
Mm. And I suppose cohorts really change, don't they? Like something that you're like, I'm really happy with this unit, this is great. And then you try and teach it to a different class and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I know. I don't know how that happens. It's true. It's totally true. And you only know that as being an experienced teacher. That you go, oh, last year this was brilliant. It was so good. The children were so engaged. And then you get a completely different response and you do have to just go on another journey. Yeah, maybe sometimes I think it's the way I've taught it. Maybe it was all new and fresh and I was full of enthusiasm, and maybe you get maybe complacent and go, oh, we're going to do this lesson. It could have been my the way I portrayed the lesson, but yeah, the cohort of children you definitely adjust your
Mm,
teaching to, but then that's just good teaching. That's in every
absolutely.
subject. Yeah.
And I think what you said there about, like, oh, maybe it was the way I taught it. I think that is default, like teacher guilt, that is, isn't it? It's immediately, it's like, what did I do? Because you don't want to blame the children because that sounds bad as well, don't you? But
Yeah. It
sometimes
was
it
them.
is. Sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's just,
Come on,
the
guys.
dynamic. Sometimes it's the weather, could be literally
True.
could be anything. There's and again, it's not like I think
Mm.
non-teachers don't understand
Oh,
how
yeah.
movable teaching is and how,
Yeah.
tiring it is being on all the time and being, excuse me, I'm
Yeah.
losing my
Sorry.
earbuds, which is a feature of every time I try
Good.
and do anything.
Yeah, I mean, especially like the early years. I do love I've never been a reception class teacher. I've done every other year group. Um, I think that's a good thing. I loved having them for an hour. But I do feel like I am a bit of a party entertainer. And you are full on it the whole time. There's not much of now over to you. It's a lot of go, which is really fun because I'm really receptive to it, and it's really cute to see sort of the beginnings of all those little musical sparks happening.
Yeah, especially when they haven't got any inhibitions either, have they? So they will just sing and they will just get involved, and it's so
Yeah,
lovely. And you wish you could bottle that and keep it going all the way
yeah,
through, but they're going to
definitely.
become like a big hulking year six who's like, I'm not singing, and there's not
I
very
know.
much we can do about it.
And even I can say, you did in year three. I knew I knew you. I was like, you were at that microphone. What's happened? But yeah, that's just growing up stage. I think
Yeah.
I really see it. We do Edenbridge's Got Talent every year, which is coming up soon. And it's very relaxed. Okay. We don't have parents coming in to watch it. It's to make it as inclusive as possible. It's kind of in 3 rounds. So the first round is very open. It's during their music lesson, and any child can do whatever they want in front of the other children in their class. I do let children record things as well at home and send it in to me if they don't want to do it in front of children. And then if it's a skill like horse riding or, I don't know, football in the park, they film it and they send it in. But from reception, I can guarantee nearly every child will want to do something.
Mm.
They'll go, someone comes up, sings a song, and the next child goes, I know a song, and they sing exactly the same song. And the next child sings exactly the same song. And for an hour, we might listen to the same song, which is very, very sweet. Because they all want to take part. They haven't actually thought of anything until that moment. We have a lot of roly-polies as well. I can do gymnastics, and one does a roly-poly, then the next does one. Anyway, as it goes up the school, the year threes and fours, it really matters. It really matters. Oh, they've planned for weeks. They've been asking me since September, oh, can I do this? Can I work in a group? I've had an idea. And they are really invested. And classically, by year 6, I might have about 6 children who want to take part. Those 6 are brilliant and they really, really go for it. But yeah, I can see the age of progression as well.
Yeah.
But I'm invested in those 6. They're the ones that are going to probably follow music as their thing.
I was going to ask you actually about whether you've got any transition links with secondary schools and whether, whether they're appreciating the work that you do or
Yes, we do. Now, I am music lead for Kent and Medway Hub. So I have a good network of secondary schools because there are about 8 secondary schools in the hub meetings, which is excellent to talk about what we do and the children we give to them. I have a couple of local secondary schools that engage really well, and they are aware of the provision we're sending on. And I've done some good sort of little projects with them. One of our secondary schools held a junior orchestra, and you came with whatever instrument you had. So I bought a mini bus of about 10 children. They could play one note on the clarinet. They came. It was perfect. And they sat within the secondary school orchestra. So they were in that environment, seeing what their instrument could do in the future. It was lovely. It was lovely to see. And then they're kind of inspired by this big grown-up person sat next to them. And they just got to play a couple of notes, and they just felt it was perfect. We've done a few singing sort of collaborations as well. There are a few secondary schools that don't engage at all, and I have emailed, and it's time I know is a massive thing. Or I don't know if they're just sort of they're going to do it their way anyway. Whatever children come into year 7, they've got a plan. They don't really want to know whether they've started piano lessons or not. But I guess they'll show their knowledge in some way. The children that are going up. So yes and no. I'd like some more collaboration. To be honest, I've never had a secondary school teacher come to my school, even though I've offered. It's obviously a different world, the primary secondary sort of teaching, the ways of teaching. And I have gone to visit a couple of secondary schools to see what they do in their year 7s, and it's been a mixture really. I've seen schools where they're doing exactly what I thought they were doing. I've got 2 children have been through secondary school. They're 19 and 21, and my eldest is at Chichester University doing musical theatre. So she has done music throughout her whole secondary school. So I kind of had an idea of what it looked like just from their experiences. And yeah, I went into a year 7 class, and they all sat behind a keyboard learning a piece of music, learning chords, and they'd go working through a booklet. And I did have that as my vision of what it could be like. But then I also went to a singing lesson with the whole of that, I think it was 7 and 8, doing Joseph musical. So it's there's lots of music going on in different formats, and we do have a bit of a link. I think it could be better. I think it could be a little bit more communicated, a bit more. I think the secondary schools communicate well with each other, and the primary schools seem to communicate well with each other. And the overlap maybe not so much, even though we have our hub meetings and everyone's on the same meeting. That transition I think could be improved or just utilized more.
I think that's probably the case, everywhere with all schools across the country. It's a real thing, isn't it? I think sometimes, like you say, it's a different type of teaching, isn't it, between primary and secondary, and sometimes secondary colleagues don't really recognise what's been done in primary schools because it looks so very different to secondary, and particularly if they're relying on the children to tell them what they've done. I mean,
also we have that the conversation always goes on is, can they read notation? I'm like, that's not my main goal. Sorry guys, but you can do that from now on, but my lot can, they understand rhythm, pulse, they can pitch. Don't don't be judging their musical knowledge on whether they can read notation, because that'll be a minority of my children. We
Mm.
talk about notation a lot. We they will look at it, they recognize what it is. We read lots of rhythm, lots of we do lots of Kadai, we do lots of ear training. So musically, they are above where they are for the classic reading notation.
Mm.
Um, and I still don't like that. That's the judgment level.
Yeah, and I think that's a
Yeah.
little bit so. As one of my reasons for starting this podcast was getting irritated by people saying, "Oh, schools don't do music," and I think that is all tied up with that. It's like, oh, children
Yeah.
don't read music anymore, or children aren't learning to play the violin. And actually, as you've described here, for the first half of this discussion, we were talking about the curriculum, which has very little to do with learning to play the violin or,
Mm-hmm.
notation. There's a bit of notation, as we know, in Key Stage 2, in the national curriculum.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people, they look at what's happening in schools, or they imagine in their own brains what's happening in schools, and because it
Mm,
doesn't conform to children
yeah.
taking grade 1 theory or children taking grade 3 on the violin, suddenly it becomes,
Yeah.
oh, why don't schools do music anymore?
Yeah, definitely. I found that even with choosing the ukulele in year 6, because I was told, that's not very useful for a year 7 wind band or year 7 strings band. I'm like, sorry, but they learned the ukulele and they loved it. And to be honest, they learned so many musical elements during their time of learning an instrument that they could play, they felt confident with. I I think the choice of ukulele or something like that is that it's gonna spark their interest in learning another instrument. My job wasn't to start them off, learning and then pass them on. It was, I've inspired them, and then over to secondary schools. If you have a scheme where they all learn violin, brilliant. My lot are going to be well up for that because they know what it feels like to learning an instrument, and how satisfying it is, because the instrument I chose suited their age group, and it made them feel like they could do something. It was quite empowering, and it gave them a positive image of what learning an instrument is. Whereas, I think if I gave my gang 30 violins, it's such a diverse class. That's hard. There's going to
Mm.
be some kind of failures, which I am not up for. That's not my aim. I don't want someone to feel like they can't do it.
Mm.
Yeah, so I have come across that with the primary secondary. There's a little jarring on that. Um, I am prepping them for secondary, but I'm not prepping them for the wind band.
Yeah.
It is definitely, the musicality is what's coming through with them. Also, we do a lot of digital music. We do lots of, but it's all free. We don't have the budget to have Soundwave and all sorts of digital resources.
Mm.
But with Chrome Music Lab and Groove Pizza, and there's hundreds of freebies. So we have a whole term on digital music. And I think if, going into secondary again, that's something that's coming more and more into their
Mm.
curriculum, is how to create music technically, music tech, and um, it's very freeing. It's really fun as well. It's really fun topic.
Mm.
So yeah, and compare that to saying whether they come in as grade 2 piano. It's hard to say. I can't say which one's better. I've just given them a route into music.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think you're totally right. It's about giving them stuff that is going to inspire them and going to build those basic skills so that they can then engage with whatever music they want to do in the future.
yeah,
Um, I think just generally, you know, primary education is the purpose of primary education is not to prepare children for secondary school. The purpose of primary education is to give them the education that they need at the time. And I think
Yeah.
you sound like you're striking a really good balance between giving them what they need right now and also giving them the little things that are going to help them to access Key Stage 3 when they get there.
The aim, like you, I stay in the moment because my job is primary, but I just need, I'd like them to have a path, and I would like them to, I'm always saying everyone could be a musician. I I am promoting music as a job, and everything we talk about, like if we talk about singing, so this is a possible career. And I'm kind of planting the seed that it's an option for them for their future. And if not, then just love music all your life, and that's fine too.
That is such a great message. I have one more question for you, I think, which is what is on your wish list? Like what's next for your like
Oh,
Edenbridge's musical life?
okay. Well, it's probably just staffing issue because it's just me. But I love my Key Stage 2 choir, but I want a Key Stage 1 choir. I they're like you said, they are the enthusiastic gang that then would automatically join the Key Stage 2 choir. So I think that's on my list already, but I need to find a person because I haven't got
Mm.
enough hours in the day. So there's a few people saying they're interested. So that could be my next project. Same thing as always every year, funding. Let's keep pushing that. Our budgets have just gone in, and I always kind of ask for the stars, but because I know what's out there, I know what resources are available, and if only we could have them, we can do so much. So funding, and I don't know what else. What else would be on my wish list? Just to keep the role I have. Is that like a low bar?
I think
I would love
that's a relevant concern.
I would love not that all schools have a music specialist, but that music is in all schools. So as part of being, part of the lead hub, I will keep spreading the word that music is essential and vital and a joy, and you shouldn't miss out.
Well, hopefully we've helped you to spread that message a little bit today.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been really fascinating finding out how you're doing things in your school, and I know that a lot of our listeners will find that really helpful and get some new ideas and stuff. So just thank you very much, Helen.
Lovely. Thanks for having me.
Primary Music in Conversation is brought to you by Music Education Solutions, presented by Dr. Liz Stafford, edited by Kay Charlton.